So you mentioned crazy ideas. What are some of those crazy ideas that you guys are banting around in the A16Z offices that you think will define the future of Silicon Valley and tech here?
Yeah, so we go, the way we sort of go is, we call ourselves sort of extremists on thinking about ideas, which is generally like if smart people in the industry are going to have figured out everything that's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years. Like it's actually, it's one of the things like Peter, my little argument with my shoulder, Peter talks a lot about secrets, and he talks about secrets being something that you know or believe that other people either don't know or don't believe. I actually think like over a 5 or 10 year period, there actually aren't very many secrets. Like most of the good ideas are already kind of obvious. And by the way, they've probably been tried before and they probably failed. But the time is going to come where they're going to work. And so, we in the industry, the iPad is a spectacular new idea, except it wasn't a new idea. Apple had something called the Newton 20 years earlier. That was basically the same thing. It failed then. It worked in 2009. So tablet computing was not a new idea. It happened to take 20 years to get it to work. But for that entire 20-year period, it did look like a good new idea. So most of the good ideas are kind of out there. They're circulating, or they're running. By the way, they're running in labs, over here in the engineering department. Like they're already up and running as prototypes, and grad students are working on them. And so that part of it is not like, and we swim in that world and try to understand it and all that, but like it's not that there are huge undiscovered ideas with a short-term time frame. So I think we spend a lot more of our time on the idea side trying to think, okay, 10 plus years out, right? Sort of take the extreme view, right? Of like, okay, it's sort of the core to the venture philosophy, which is forget whether or not it will work, ask the question about what if it did work, and then kind of push that question out as far as you can, right? Yeah. So I mentioned self-driving cars. So let's just assume for a moment that self-driving cars actually work. Okay, what are the consequences of that, right? Well, for example, one consequence is, potentially cars changed our idea of geography, right? Before cars, everybody used to have to live in the city. Cars created the idea of the suburb, right? Because you could actually commute. We all sit here, 80 years later, wishing that nobody had thought of that, because commutes are horrible, right? The number one correlator to job satisfaction is commute time, right? And so you've got, and you see this every day. You're sitting there in traffic, sitting there next to. Everybody has the same epiphany. It's like it's 8 in the morning. I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm sitting. There's a car over there with one person in it. There's a car over here with one person in it. I'm sitting here alone. Like somebody really should come up with a carpooling app. Every morning, right? Every driver has that idea, and yet we all still commute, right, in our cars. And so we all hate it. And it's all wasted time. And we have people at our companies now who commute 2 or 3 hours a day, and it's just completely wasted time. Now they can play Pokemon Go, right, while they drive, but that has other issues. So then you say, okay, self-driving cars. Well, self-driving cars, maybe you can reclaim all that time, right? Maybe you can reclaim all the commute time, right? And so maybe all of a sudden, you can have the idea that maybe an hour-long commute is actually a big perk, right? Because instead of driving, instead of having to sit and focus and lurch through traffic, what if your car is a rolling living room, right? And what if you get to spend that hour playing with your kid, or reading the news, or watching TV, or actually working, right? Because you don't have to worry about driving. Or what if you have different kinds of cars? What if some cars are rolling offices? What if other cars are rolling, by the way, I can take a nap. I can sleep. I can sleep for 6 hours at home, get in the car, sleep for another hour and a half on my way to work, be all set, right? And so in that version of the world, all of a sudden, maybe suburbs maybe now we go to exurbs, right? Maybe now geography becomes actually much more tractable, and we can have these urban environments get much, much larger. Right, and so we're trying to think, okay, then back from that, okay, what would be the consequences of that, right? What would be the consequences of that in terms of how these companies get built? What would be the infrastructure that has to get built to support that kind of thing, right? What are the kind of early signals that kind of show that kind of thing is either starting to happen or not? Yeah. And then try to kind of chart at least some view of how the future will unfold. And so, yeah.
So